Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Guardians of the Future podcast. I'm your host, Justin Lada. Thanks for tuning in last week. If you caught Marco Lanave with the Akron Rubber Ducks joining us, and lucky enough to get another, I'm not going to call him a guest because he's not really a guest. He's a former co-host on this show. He was on here a bunch of times, and he's been ducking me for years to try to come back, and that's okay. I ducked him a few weeks ago, but Pat Ellington is back. Former, it was still IBI, I guess, back in the day when we did that. So, yeah, former IBI writer and intern has agreed to join me on this week's podcast. Pat, thanks for coming back, buddy.
No problem. Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me. And it's good to be here again. So, yeah, I kind of, looking back on it now, I'm kind of just thinking in my head. I remember listening to this back in 2018, 2019, when this was the Farm Report. I remember listening to this, hearing about Will Bence's 4 home run game and stuff. And it was
man,
kind of just such a long time ago now. I was only like 18 then, but yeah.
All right, and this podcast is over because every time I talk to Pat, I wind up feeling like I'm a million years old.
Oh man, you are a million.
Oh, I had a welcome back banner for you, but I'm not going to use it now because now I'm mad at you. No,
that's very flattering. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, no, I don't know why it took this long to get Pat back on the show. I think I should have thought about this episode a while ago. Made too much sense to have you on since you spent a lot of your time in the Guardian system for all kinds of places. Why don't you remind people where you took off for greener pastures from me?
Greener pastures. That's a joke.
In theory.
In theory. In theory, not always in practice. I picked up bylines at a lot of places. Baseball Prospectus, Baseball America, MLB.com. Those are the main 3. Society of American Baseball Research. I'm a writer for them as well. Those are probably the big 4. I have my own independent blog called the Red Black Green Baseball blog, where I cover Black players from throughout the African diaspora. And I do some freelancing at different other couple places. SI affiliate for San Francisco Giants. I work for them as well. I do some work for Pinstripe Alley as well. So I'm kind of all over the place.
Yeah, you are. So many, you just kind of forgot how to name them all. Yeah, Pat did a bunch of good stuff back in the day on Kenzie Noel and George Valera, and you did some good stuff in the last year or so on Brian Rokia. We'll touch on all that because we're going to have to talk about George Valera, unfortunately. But you and I have seen Lake County the most this year out of anybody. At least that's our coverage area. So we're going to talk a little bit about the captains, and then we'll talk about some other highlights in the system. And yeah, we'll get into Valera, we'll get into Williams, we'll get into Joey Cantillo, all that stuff. So stick around to the end because Pat has seen most of these players, if not all of them too. So not just Lake County, but Ethan Hankins. We've talked about him a couple times on the podcast since he's come back. If you listened last week, you heard the interview I put up with him. 2 of them, actually. The day he came back from Arizona was the day before he was going to make his first start, and then I talked to him after his second start, I should say. But Pat, you were at his first start, so I caught his good one, his second home start, and then he pitched again over the weekend on Friday night. He pitched really good. He had 3 innings, 1 walk, 1 hit, and 3 strikeouts. He was 92-95. That's about what you had him at the first outing you saw him. So people have heard my voice plenty on what I think about Ethan Hankins so far. What was your first observation? Because not a guy you saw, obviously, because he was last pitched in 2019. So what was your first thought on his return?
My first thought was he looked really trim and slim and kind of in shape, relatively. Not like all the way like Hawking or anything like that, but he looked really in relative game shape. I'm sure he's probably not in full game shape, and you probably said it himself about where he's at. But he looked healthy, and he looked like he's been on the field and doing things you expect a professional player to do with their body. So that was really good to see. When he got on the mound, it was his very first start back in first game action in like 3 years. So 2-3 years. So you really can't take anything. You really got to take everything with a grain of salt up to a certain point. But so you just kind of look for moral victories, I guess. So he was throwing strikes. He got 2 strikeouts, and I think you remember retweeting and looking at the one with the curveball. The shapes on the stuff looked nice, and he looked like he had arsenal worthy of a guy who could probably start in high A. He looked like a minor leaguer, like a legit minor leaguer. So yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm at with him. I just want to see him get back on his feet and throw more. Just because he's been gone for so long and he's still so young and he has a lot of potential too, which is why Cleveland took a risk on him because he kind of plummeted because he was potentially on track to be a 1-1 guy before the injury started happening his senior high school. Because I remember a lot of guys like you and Willie were kind of targeting him as that intriguing guy that Cleveland could take in that late teens, early 20s slot that they seem to be stuck in. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with Ethan Hankins right now. I'm just ready to see him do more, build more on his arm.
Yeah, he's only up to 3 innings so far. Hasn't gotten out of the third yet. They're keeping him around the 40 pitch mark, and he said the next step for him is 4 innings and about 60 pitches. So we'll see when that happens. But yeah, I agree. I mean, he looked like a guy who obviously had missed some time. The last couple starts have been better. The shape of the slider or the shape of the curveball looks good, I would say, because that was a huge pitch for him when he was an amateur. It was such a big hammer and gives him a good 2-pitch mix. I would like to see the fastball. I think it'll come too when he gets more endurance, just pitching every day.
Yeah, the velocity and stuff is going to wax and wane, but at the same time, the shape is definitely there that people were kind of harping on that he had. And it's going to be interesting to see how Cleveland kind of leverages his build because he's probably one of the biggest pitchers Cleveland's had in the system in a while. I mean, Gavin Williams is pretty big too, and so is Tanner Bybee. He's a solid 6'4", 6'3". But Ethan Hankins has a lot of potential with his frame, just with the extension and the high slot. They like to kind of tinker with guys and stuff like that, especially since he has the curveball too. So he already has a lot of tools to go north-south. And how can I forget Sam Hitchens? I'm sorry, Sam Hitchens is here.
Yeah.
I apologize, man.
Hopefully, I mean, Cleveland has not had a lot of success with high school pitchers. Tristan McKenzie has been a good one. But before Tristan McKenzie, you had to go back to CC Sabathia for the last time they really had a lot of success with the high school pitcher. Sam Hentges counts in that group, obviously, as a reliever. I just can't think of anybody off the top of my head who's come up and really pitched well for them, and it's such a big gap to go from.
One thing I've noticed, they haven't had a lot of J2 guys that have been pitchers.
Yeah.
Over the last decade and a half-ish, 2 decades. I mean, last one I can think of is Danny Salazar.
Yeah, no, he comes to mind too. I'm trying to think of anybody. I mean, I guess Fausto Carmona, but Salazar was after him.
Like nobody between Salazar and now from the J2 pipeline has.
Yeah, I'm trying to go through
like a Cleveland guy, like a Cleveland guy.
Yeah, because they traded for Clase.
They traded for that one guy who from the Nationals and the Daniel Johnson trade.
Oh, Jeffrey Rodriguez, yeah. Mm-hmm. Who could forget? What a great time that was. Yeah, they have not done. I mean, basically any teenage pitcher has not been their forte. I mean, I know you like Juan Hillman a lot as a pitcher and a dude, and I do too as well. But they did not do well with him.
No.
There's a ton of guys that we've covered over the years. It's just like unbelievable that they've had no success developing. So I hope Hankins doesn't go the way of any of those guys. Certainly, it has been a long road for him, and it'll be interesting to see what they do because obviously he'll be Rule 5 eligible, and like you said, he is a big dude and he has the frame to start. And I think he'll have the stuff if he wants to be a reliever. He could be a 2-pitch reliever. It just depends on that third pitch. And
right, and if a team wants to finagle it and have him come out the bullpen or something, and come running back and no starter. Like after what the Orioles did to get Anthony Santander, I'm just very keyed in on how teams use Rule 5 draft and stuff to acquire talent. And it's just a very creative way to get guys with tools, which is what you're looking for at the end of the day. I mean, a guy who can just throw against the wall and see if they can stick. So it's just like, I mean, Ethan Hankins definitely is a Rule 5, definitely a guy I would consider taking a flyer on if I was in a position of a GM, but maybe that's why I'm not a GM. So
the Nationals would be an interesting fit for him because obviously they're terrible, but they have a lot of pitchers like him. They have Cade Cavalli and what's the other guy's name that's hurt right now too? The Jackson Rutledge. And those guys are both massive human beings and pitchers, and Hankins kind of fits that mold too. They like those kids.
I agree. Washington is also a bit more old school, so they might.
Yeah, they like high school kids too. So I mean, not that Hankins is a little bit older now, but
and they've had a lot of success with really young players over the years as well.
Yeah, I mean they've gone out and bought a lot of their. I mean, I guess Max Scherzer or Steven Strasburg was a college arm, but they've had interesting success through the draft, mostly with hitters. It seems like they've gone out and got pitching through other means, but. Anybody in Lake County that really has stood out to you? I mean, we've talked about, I'm trying to think, I've mentioned Joe Lampe on the show. Joe Lampe has really hit kind of a wall. He had a great start, and things have not looked good for him since. Not that I don't like Joe. It's just I think that early start was really fueled by a lot of contact, and he kind of seems like a guy who hits the ball back up the middle a ton and doesn't really hit the ball hard, which, hey, that's the story of everybody in Cleveland, right? They have a lot of guys who make a lot of contact, and none of it's all that great, but he's kind of fallen off recently. Is there anybody? I mean, we could talk all day about. We have a question about Juan Brito. We can talk about him because I think, to me, you look at this Lake County team. It's kind of rough right now. I mean, I like Diane Frias. Joe Lampe I like enough, and I like Juan Brito. But I'm kind of Yordi's Valdez has been pretty interesting to me too. Is there anybody that you really like or just keeping an eye on right now in Lake County for the future?
I would say Brito, Tolentino, Frias, and Valdez, Jorge Valdez. Valdez was a first and second round pick, right? Wasn't he?
He was I think he was a second round pick, yeah. He was a pretty high pick, yeah.
Yeah, he was a high pick. I know he was like a very high pick for a glove first high school infielder coming out. So
yeah, second rounder.
So yeah, they must like something and maybe want to build them up. Maybe. So we'll see. There's a question somebody asked about nutrition and bulk and stuff like that too that we got to answer about players gaining muscle too. That was really good.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But that came to mind. But so looking at this Lake County group, I remember my very first year covering minor league ball. I was covering a position in my group that had Brian Rocchio, George Valera, Jose Tena, Brian Lavacita. That's just, and I say that's just a lot of talent to have in one place at one time, especially when you look at that group from that entire year. There's going to be a lot of guys from the group that are going to make it to the majors, even if it's only for like a cup of coffee and they never go again. I mean, still, you're going to have a lot of guys who are going to be legit upper tier minor leaguers and major leaguers in that group. So I think that's kind of skewed my perspective, especially this year. It's been kind of tough, even though I've only seen a couple of homestands. It's been tough at times. Just the level of play is just kind of different. It's just a big adjustment. I'm going from Rocchio and Tena every day to now, respectfully, because those guys who play now are better than I'll ever be, and they're already in the 1% of the craft. So I want to start with Brito. He's probably the guy that probably has the best shot of being a major leaguer, and he's probably the guy people are most paying attention to because of his similarities to somebody in the Guardians lineup right now. And I'm sure you've seen the comparisons, and I know we kind of glossed and kind of skate over the comparisons, and the similarities are there, but we just got to get to address the elephant in the room about Juan Brito's similarities to Jose Ramirez. They're there, but I mean, if you guys watch Juan Brito every day and watch Jose Ramirez every day, you would see what makes Jose in terms of what makes him above average major leaguer more than just his hitting. I mean, his athleticism, his instincts really make him play up. And his athleticism in itself is really understated. I mean, he may not be a proportional chiseled guy. I mean, but he's still a very fast guy with very good foot speeds and very great instincts. And Brito doesn't have that. And Brito is not a above average defender at second or third. And Jose is a 55 at third, and he's probably like a 60 or a 70 at second on a good day. Probably when he was younger. Probably not now.
Yeah, when he was younger. Yeah, that's changed a little bit.
Yeah, he's probably a 55 now, just like he is at third. But regardless, that's a huge boon in itself. And also, Brito is strictly a second baseman. He doesn't really have an arm utility to stick on the left side of the infield at all. And that's a big hit in his profile. Because at second, he's going to be a lot more dependent on his bat. And he's not and he's also below average defender at second too, so it just puts a lot more pressure on the bat. And he also really isn't as strong as Jose either. He just doesn't have that raw power. I mean, and Jose's raw power isn't really batting practice power, but he has his forearms look like my thighs, respectively. I mean, honestly. So
yeah. He's a well-built kid. I mean, for who he is right now and the age he's at.
At only 21 years old, definitely. He's definitely on the more developed side. And he doesn't really have that much room for development left too in his frame. He's pretty much maxed out as he is right now. And that's another thing too. He really doesn't have much more to add physically unless you just Giannis Antetokounmpo if he was 5'11".
Yeah, I do echo a lot of your same sentence with Brito. Like, I don't want anybody to think that, like, oh, we're down on Juan Brito, he's not going to be a good player. I think we both see that he's got some skills. And I think the one that if you want to put that Jose Ramirez comparison on him, the only thing you can really say is, okay, this is a guy who knows the strike zone. He doesn't chase.
And he pulls the ball a lot, and he pulls the ball in the air.
Yeah, Jose didn't even do that until 2017. Yeah, so Brito's already got that going for him, which is good, especially at this age. He makes a lot of contact. The power's not there. Jose had a lot more power at this age, even though it didn't show in the majors.
And Jose was already in the majors
by age 20.
Age 20, a year earlier than Brito was.
Yeah,
he was going to turn 22 this year, and he's going to. Honestly, I don't get why Brito was in high A, and this kind of answers the question that somebody asked about. Why is Brito still in high A? He shouldn't have been there in the first place. Honestly, he should be in double A. He's advanced enough for double A. Respectfully, I think
he is in terms of pitch recognition and
the physicality may not be there, but the skill.
I don't think it's even the physicality. I think it's just this is a guy who hasn't. I mean, he's got one full season under his belt. Last year he played 107 games, and I think you're seeing right now too. I mean, he's carrying low averages on balls in play, and I think some of that too is, when you hit a lot of fly balls, they end up being lazy. Yeah, they end up being outs. Whereas grounders too are going to give you a lot of bad averages on balls in play too. But at the minor league level, you don't have the best defenders, as you just mentioned. And I do have to
run 62 game season, you guys. It does.
Yeah, and I do share the opinion that I am concerned about where he's going to end up defensively. Like, it probably is second base long term. Yeah, I could see left field as well. Yeah, the bat is definitely going to be the carrying tool for him, and it's going to be a very patient, pitch recognition, contact heavy profile. He doesn't really have, like you said, he's not a huge guy in terms of what you're going to look for from raw power. Like, I think at the end of the day, you're talking about a guy who's got 45 raw power. And the good thing about his swing is that he's going to get to all of that because, like you mentioned, he pulls the ball and he pulls it in the air. So even if you have, because I don't think anybody would have said in the minors, hey, Jose Ramirez has 45 power. No, most people would have said he had 40 grade power at best. It's certainly better now, but it's because he gets to all of it because of his ability to make contact and
he was also still a really little guy at 20, 21 years old, unlike Brito, who maxed out.
Yeah, that's a big difference for sure. So I think he'll hit. I think you're just talking about a guy who you're looking for
singles and doubles and walks.
Yeah, singles. I mean, definitely double-digit homers. Maybe I want to be careful. Like, I'm not saying I want to put a ceiling on him now because I would say too about Jose and Lindor at Lake County. I would have said 20 would have been a good year for Lindor. Look what he's done. It's an unpopular thing to talk about right now, but yeah, he doesn't have the speed. For sure. Doesn't have, maybe the base running acumen will come.
Best shortstop to wear Cleveland uniform since integration. You heard it here.
Yeah, no, that's definitely fair. That will not be Juan Brito. Definitely not. Won't
no, I just wanted to run my victory lap because a lot of people, as you know, have been really disrespectful of Lindor since he left Cleveland, and unrightfully so, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. So.
He's a good player. Is he as good as he was in Cleveland? No, he's not. Still a great player, even though I think both teams would make that trade again. But that's not why.
Progressive field was so perfect for him and Jose, like just for their hitting profiles and stuff. I mean, it was just ridiculous.
It is. It really is, and that'll be a good thing for Brito too. The only thing I would say too about Brito is I have not seen a lot of him from the right side. I think you talked about it last homestand. I don't think his swing from the right side is as good as it is from the left. But I maybe you've seen him from the right side more than I have. He had a rough week in Lansing this past week. Some changeups fooled him, but I just haven't seen the same level of production from him, the same swing, the same ability to make good contact from the right side as I have from the left side. I feel like he's very left-handed dominant right now.
I don't remember. It may have been about somebody else, but I know with Brito, his right-handed swing is definitely a bit weaker from what I've seen than his left-handed swing. Just from his mechanics and stuff, it just looks a lot more robotic and stiff. It's just not, I think it's probably just the reps and stuff. Most switch hitters are way better from the left side than they are from the right side, just from how many plate appearances they see. Left-handed, right-handed. I mean, you got to think about it. For most of these guys are switch hitting at 7, 8 years old, and for most of their lives, they're not going to see a good left-handed hitter from the right-handed batter's box for most of their lives. And I think there's one thing too about the platooning with left-handers. I don't think people realize that most left-handed hitters aren't seeing major league caliber pitchers at any age who are left-handed, unless they're in California or like Texas or something. And even then, you're not going to see that many. Most you're going to see is in California. I mean, you only look at left-handers only 17% of people in the world. Just think about applying MLB standards to that small group of people compared to the 8 billion we already have and the pitchers we got to work with already. I mean, it's just.
That's a good perspective. I never really thought about that before. About you may be a switch hitter, but if you're not playing like travel ball in Florida or Texas or California, you're not playing year round. You're not seeing guys who all are, maybe you have a major league parent or something. Right. You're not seeing a lot of famous left-handers. I mean, and the guys that you are seeing are obviously very good. Like, there's a reason no high school right-handers ever gone 1-1. Going back to our conversation with Ethan Hankins, but there have been lefties that have been taken pretty highly, and like you said, it's either a pitcher who you probably feel is very elite, or you're in college. But yeah, as a teenager, you're probably right. You're not seeing a lot of left-handed pitchers, so you're not getting a lot of reps right-handed.
Didn't Mackenzie Gore go 1-1?
Who?
Mackenzie Gore.
Yeah, high schooler.
Yeah, lefty.
Yeah, like that's what I'm saying. Like if you're like Juan Brito's an international prospect. How many as a 14 or 15-year-old? And I know you have a lot of the what's the right word for this? That's underhanded trainers down there and all those other camps that Major League supports that or turns a blind eye to, an international free agency that we could have a long conversation about one day. How many of those guys are left-handers? You know what I mean? Like, I'm talking about the Astros with Framber Valdez. They signed him when he was a lot older. Like, how many guys do you see like that when you're like 14 or 15? Like, there's just not a lot down there. So you're right. You're not getting as many reps right-handed. It's hard to think about go back to Lindor. Think about Lindor. He's been a switch hitter his whole life too. Right. But he had
how many good left-handers was he facing in high school?
Probably. Well, I think he probably benefited more than most because remember his parents moved him to the USA from Puerto Rico.
Yeah, that's 12. What I'm saying. I mean, that is true, and he did start playing. He was playing varsity baseball in 8th grade too. But like, I don't think people realize that.
But a guy like Juan Brito probably wasn't. So you're right. The opportunities to do those kinds of things are limited. I just never thought about that in that perspective before. So maybe I'm hoping that for Brito, it's not like a case of he is better. He might always be better left-handed than right-handed, but it's not a case of he just isn't good right-handed. It's the case of this is he's only had 2 years of reps where he's facing left-handed pitching, and even at this level, the pitchers aren't this level aren't always the best either.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
That's a really good way to look at it, actually. Diane Frias to me has been really interested. I like the defense. I like the ability for him. The same thing. He's an undersized guy. If you want to talk about more comparisons to Lindor, or not Lindor, to Jose, I mean, Diane Frias is almost a little bit more like Jose than Brito is because he's 5'7".
Defense.
Better defense. I think he has the same kind of plate discipline. He's also a switch hitter, more likely to wind up
a little bit more power.
Yeah, I think the power will come for him. I like the swing a lot.
Mm-hmm.
More walks and strikeouts as well. I think he is a little bit younger than Brito. Is he not? He's 20. He'll be 21 in June. So he'll.
I hate to sound like a guy from 1980. But he just kind of looks like a major leaguer in a sense. He just really has. I don't know if it was his time playing in the Venezuela Winter League or whatever, and getting that and playing on Venezuela for the WBC, Or is that Colombia? I think
Colombia.
Colombia. He's Colombian, right?
Yeah.
Wow, that's rare. Okay. Um, that's interesting. Him and Ursula. They
Yeah,
on the second.
he was on Team Colombian WBC. He played in the Colombian Winter League. He had a great Colombian Winter League campaign last offseason. And
He was
that
very
was
high.
coming off a pretty poor year, I would say, in Lynchburg last year, where he had a 25% strikeout rate, only hit 239, walked plenty, but I was concerned with the swing and miss. He has halved his swing and miss this year. So last year in low A, it was a 14% swing strike rate. This year it's in the 7, which that's amazing for a guy to be a level up after he struggled last year. I mean, he just had a great winter, and I think he's faster. I mean, I know the speed on him is we're not talking about an above average runner. We're talking about a guy who's going to be average, but I like the foot speed. Like you said, the defense I think is going to play at second or third. He might even be able to play a little shortstop. I wouldn't make him. I know he was the primary shortstop for Team Columbia, but if I'm a major league team trying to win, I'm not putting him at shortstop. But I think there's some interesting tools there, and I think he's definitely a guy to watch so far in Lake County. Anybody else? I know you mentioned. Who else did you mention? We mentioned Valdez. His bat's been better this year. I know you watched some of the playoffs last year for Lake County. His bat, not a guy they drafted for the bat, like you mentioned. He was a glove first pick. But I feel like his bat this year, I've mentioned multiple times on this podcast, it's been better. He has made better contact, and the manager, Omir Santos, has just said he has done a better job of being selective on what he goes after. Instead of swinging at a lot of stuff, he's looking for what pitches he can actually drive, and I think that's helped him a lot.
Man, Verlander is still in the game. Top of the 8.
Yeah. So is we. Yeah, we're recording this as Sunday Night Baseball is going on, so a lot of conversations going on. Yeah.
Taking me back to my childhood. I hope I'm not making you feel old.
As always, that's fine.
Yeah. Well, Valdez has been really impressive to see him kind of take a step forward offensively, because up to this point he's kind of been very putrid and just been all glove and base running. So it's kind of cool to see him show signs of life. He definitely, the glove is major league caliber for sure, but it's going to be as a utility player most likely, barring some unforeseen development unless he takes this further. Yeah, I think he'll definitely make it to the majors as a utility guy. We just gotta wait and see. I think this year, kind of, if he can kind of be average-ish in the upper minors, he'll definitely stick somewhere, or he'll definitely be an in-depth guy in somebody's system in AAA in his early to mid-20s for sure. Guys like him don't go in the second round for any reason just because of the glove. They have to see something with the bat as well, and he's showing that he has the actions to be a competent player. So
I think it was a projection thing for him too. Like he's not a big guy, obviously.
Yeah, that was a huge projection pick, and he was even littler when he was in high school.
Right. So and he's grown a little bit. I won't say a lot. He might be a good key in for the conversation. We'll talk about a question about strength and conditioning and how he's growing. Pitcher wise, I don't know. I got to say, like Josh Wolf's on the IL again. Lenny Torres has been a little better as a reliever. 16 strikeouts, 13 2/3 innings. I know he pitched today on Sunday as we're recording this. Only 2 runs allowed, but he's got 12 walks. So he just cannot seem to find the strike zone. I got to be honest, though, when it comes to pitching there, like the only guys that I've really been blown away by are, well, you got Hankins. Webb has been fine. I'm waiting for more consistency from Webb. Yeah, Reid Johnston definitely is a guy that I know I like a lot. I don't know how you feel about him. He had a couple of inconsistent starts. The last 2 times out, his start this past week was a lot better. 6 innings, 6 strikeouts, 3 walks. The walks to me are a little bit concerning, but 32 strikeouts and 25 2/3. I like the fastball and slider. I think there's promise with the changeup. He's just such a big and lanky guy that I just wonder if he's going to repeat his delivery enough and if he's going to have enough velocity to survive at the big league level. I think a bullpen role might be better for a guy of his size. Like he's kind of like a spider out there. He's really all arms and legs. Like it's a lot there. And the fastball's got good arm side movement and some sink to it. The slider's huge. I just, repeating the delivery and the development of the changeup, I think are going to be a big issue, a big thing for him. And
I agree.
Control wise, he might be better in the bullpen, but pitcher wise, like, okay, there's Johnston who's interesting. We talked about Hankins. we're waiting for some consistency on Webb. But like pitching wise, there just hasn't been a whole lot there. Like I have not been blown away by Tommy Mace. Rodney Boone has not been great. Okay, well that's not fair. Will Dion's been good. I just worry about I just worry about the velocity with him. But otherwise, he's great.
Yeah, Will Dion, Barry Kershaw's delivery. The fastball is just what 91, 93 has some pop to it. And then he has what curveball slider, right?
Yeah, have you seen him 93? Because I got to say, I've only seen him like 89, 92. Have you seen him at 93?
I've seen him touch 93 on occasion.
Okay.
I just said that, but 92, 91, 89, 90, 91 mostly. Yeah, so with Will Dion, the velocity, it does scare you because the velocity did dip last year, I think, down the stretch.
He's not a big guy.
Yeah, and he's what, like 5'11", 170, 180, if that. And he doesn't really look that much more developed this year either. And even though Cleveland has had success with underdeveloped guys, they usually have a very standout tool, and that's usually a really, really good pitch or really, really, really good command. And Will Dion doesn't have either of those. Although I will say he does use his delivery well for deception, so it will be interesting to see. And Reid Johnston too. Johnston, he's very lanky, but he does hide the ball pretty well. I think he will make it very interesting relief piece because I think he could add more velocity because he's only, 93, 94.
He was throwing harder last year. When he was in Lynchburg, I saw him to 95. That's why I was really interested in him because he does have that good sink. But this year it's been more like 90, 92, topping out at 93. But it's early, and all the starts I've seen Johnston pitch, it's been cold. So I'd like to see him pitch.
Yeah, I saw him hit 93, 94 on occasion. But I think, I remember him touching 95 too last year. As you said, the slider is his best pitch for sure. And I think I had it in my little notebook as a 55, and I had the fastball as a 45 right now. I don't think the fastball could be average. But yeah, his command is like a 40 right now for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be a big deal for him. And like I said, repeating the delivery. But you're right, the deception's there, and he'll be really tough on right-handers no matter what role he's in. If he's a reliever or starter, I mean, the way he is out towards like the first base, like he's delivering from the first base side of the rubber, and his arm is going so far out to the third base side because it's so late.
It's just such a tough angle.
Yeah, so I think right-handers have a hard time with the slider. He can backdoor the sinker. That would be a good 2-pitch mix for him. I don't know what the changeup will look like. I think there's some promise there, but yeah, I mean he's been good. Dion's been good. Obviously Hankins is interesting. We're waiting more on him. Everybody else though, man, just like Denholm has had his moments. I haven't really been blown away. Webb, like I said, wanted to see some consistency. Tyler Thornton has been good out of the bullpen. 30 strikeouts in 13 innings. He's like 92, 93, can hit 94, and slider is interesting. He's a funky guy.
I will say Lenny Torres is interesting at the bullpen, although the walk rate is super duper high. I'm liking he's showing signs of life even with everything he's been doing in his career this far and stuff,
Another high school pitcher. Yeah, I'm hoping they can find some success for him. But yeah, control is just
he really deserves it. But the stuff is legit for sure. The fastball and slider. When I watched them, they look pretty nice.
I haven't seen him as a reliever yet live, so I'll have to next time they're at home. I'll have to make sure I'm out there for one of his relief appearances. Speaking of relievers, Sean Rapp was promoted last week to Lake County. He had, I believe, 6 strikeouts in 3 innings in his first couple of outings in Lake County. 17 2/3 overall this season, 25 strikeouts, a 1.53 ERA. Speaking of guys who had no business being at the level he was at, he had no business being at low A. He's talking about guys who also release the ball from a very far angle. He is all the way out to the first base side with his delivery. It's going to be really fun to watch hitters try to deal with that going forward, because I think you just don't see a lot of guys with his arm angle, and I think he was like a low 90s guy as a reliever at North Carolina, and hopefully they can add some velocity to him, and he would be a really, really tough matchup kind of lefty, even though there's no such thing as a Luke anymore, but that arm angle is going to be Super tough. All right. Anybody else in the captain's path that I haven't mentioned that you think is worth the, we talked a little about Lampy, Hankins, Johnston, Lenny Torres just now. We talked about Will Dion, Brito, Yordis Valdez. Anybody else you think that is worthy of a mention in Lake County before we kind of move on to some other hot topics?
I like Isaiah Green's ability to rotate. That was really interesting to me. I didn't know he. I saw him pull a home run that hit the building where they had the batting cages at. I didn't know he had that type of raw power.
I will say, yeah, I got to be honest. I have not been super impressed with Green's ability to hit. It just seems like he is going to have an awful hard time with breaking balls and just staying on the baseball. I don't have a lot of, it's going to be a long development path.
He's a very frustrating player because he has a lot of interesting skills and idiosyncrasies to a game that make you say, okay, there's something here. But at the same time, he really struggles at a lot of basic stuff. He just reads out as a really just raw. I've never seen a raw player who's just so skilled at certain things like he is in certain ways. But at the same time, he's probably a corner outfielder just because the route running is in there, even though the speed is, and the arm is just like a 25 or 30 maybe.
That's going to be really harmful to his profile. You're right. He does have more raw power than I thought. It's going to be super hard to get to in games, but yeah. The speed is good. I think when you have a guy with that speed, not all guys with speed are great route runners in terms of being a good defender in the outfield.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like if you're talking about a skill that you need to develop, that should be one that's easier to teach.
Yeah, definitely.
So I feel like he's a guy who can learn that over time. When you have that kind of speed, it's a lot easier to teach that. But yeah, the profile is going to be so limited because
it's kind of hard to judge outfield defense too in the minors.
It is. I mean, I think when you look at outfield defense in the minors, it is you either see it or you don't. Like I remember Greg Allen being down there, and Greg Allen was a guy like, wow, this guy runs fantastic routes. He is super good. Petey Halpin last year, everything he did in the outfield, I think you notice it when you see a guy who can play good outfield defense in the minors. You just see them kind of cover so much space, and
especially in center, even though like most guys who play center in the minors are still going to move to a corner, like
right.
But still, I mean, it kind of lets you know, like you really got to be different to play center field in the minors. I mean, even in the majors you do. I mean, even in the minors you do, but I mean, in the majors, just to have that burst to cover that ground to catch up to those hits those guys are putting out is just different. The demand is different.
Yeah, Will Brennan.
I think that's why you tolerate a mile straw in center field.
Yep, because like I said, you just either have it or you don't. It's something you just notice very easily in terms of outfield defense. It's harder to judge, but when you see it, you definitely know it, and other guys that you don't stand out in terms of outfield defense. It's like you're looking for, okay, where do they have to improve? What could be better for them? And you're trying to find all the ways they can improve versus, okay, like Petey Halpin or when Bradley Zimmer was in the minors, or Greg Allen and Will Brennan, like, okay, these guys can play center. Like you can just tell they have that kind of range and experience and they get those good reads off the bat just naturally. Okay, so you mentioned Isaiah Green. Let's talk about Bo Naylor a little bit. He's up as the 27th man for the doubleheader that's almost over. It's in the 8th inning as we're recording this on Sunday. Got one at bat during the day. I know a lot of people want him up right now, and I think it really is just they are trying to get as much value as they can out of Zunino, and Gallagher has been a really good backup catcher.
Gallagher honestly should be starting right now.
Yeah, I would agree with that too.
There's no really reason why he shouldn't be, just kind of based on the defense in itself, because he's been one of the best defenders in all the baseball this year behind the plate.
Yeah, I watched a lot of.
But although it's a smaller sample size than Zeno too, so I will give Zeno that. And Zeno's also has had a good amount of funky stuff happen so far this season. Respectfully,
he has, and he's coming off of a nasty injury too, which it's one of those surgeries that nobody really knows how guys are going to recover from. So we'll see. But
who knows how he's dealing with that subconsciously and consciously.
Yeah, for sure. It's a painful injury.
Yeah, and plus it's a nerve injury. Like that's just not really.
It's not a tendon. It's not a bone. Yeah, it's a nerve. It's very different than other injuries.
I mean, even from the mental aspect, me thinking about a nerve injury is just kind of it's jarring. It's jarring.
Yeah.
I mean, and think about you got the guy trying to deal with that and put that behind him so he can put his body on the lines at a thing like catcher
especially a catcher. Yeah.
When you 190-mile-per-hour balls moving in different directions flying towards you. That's your job. I mean, I wouldn't be playing good defense either if I was Mike Zeno. And we watched Zeno play good defense in the past and go glove caliber defense. So he has the tools, maybe it's just not there. But his power is the reason. His power would make up for his lack of defensive production, but he's just not making any loud contact right now, even when he is putting the ball. We know he's going to strike out a lot, and we know he's really streaky. And we know catchers are going to, especially Cleveland catchers, are not going to probably be that good offensively.
Yeah. But Bo Naylor could be. And he was up. I mean, no, I went back and looked at a bunch of the stolen base attempts that he gave up this year because he's having a hard time throwing out runners. And there are little things. There was a video I didn't put out that he kind of stabbed at a ball that he tried to block, and or he didn't block, but it was a ball four. So I don't know. If it was ball four, he wasn't going after it, but it was a ball he just kind of stabbed at, and it went by to the backstop. Didn't look good. But there's a lot of pitching issues going on in Columbus where they're not giving him a lot of chances to throw out runners. But there was a play that I tweeted. Now, Elliot De La Cruz is a very special player. He talk about Jose Ramirez here. He took off for third base. So the batter for Louisville walked, and De La Cruz was on second base, and Naylor threw the ball back to Plesac, who was pitching. And De La Cruz was just waiting. And as soon as Naylor was flipping the ball back to Plesac, he took off for third base. So that's a steal that Naylor didn't have a chance to do that on. And I mean, even me, I truthfully didn't know that when you walk a guy like that, the ball's not dead. It's still alive. So De La Cruz was being heads up there. So good for De La Cruz. But as a catcher, you have to be aware of that. And I'm not saying Naylor has this issue all the time. This is a big problem, but I think it's just one of those things you got to be aware of. And I know I'm going to say, I think, like we talked about, they are trying to get more out of Zunino now, and they have to. And even Tito said this over the pregame on the weekend. Because of their payroll, they have to be more patient. No, fans don't want to hear that, but there are still things defensively Naylor does have to work on. I think right now it is a bad first profile, and that was always going to be the case. I mean, when they drafted him, everyone said, well, the bat's going to be ready before the glove is. That's going to be true of almost every catcher, especially at the high school level where he came from. But I know you've talked to Naylor, you've watched him. I feel like the defense at some point is going to be there. It's going to be fine because this guy puts in a ton of work. I mean, people have talked ad nauseum about how he's learned Spanish, how he has taken the initiative to work with pitching staffs, and he cares about that stuff. And I don't know, for catchers,
I remember from watching the WBC, Freddie Freeman talked very highly of how he because he was a starting catcher for Canada during the WBC. Freddie Freeman talked very highly about how prepared Bo was and how he's been handling everything and how he handled everything. And Canada's team was actually kind of decent this year too.
They were. I mean, Cal Quantrill kind of screwed him in that one start, but
but they're gonna have a lot of guys coming through there soon. They have a lot. Canada's talent pipeline is growing. It's becoming very legit. I think with Bo, as you said, he was always a bat first guy. But I think during his early years in the minors, his defense was underrated. Was kind of underrated. Like people were saying, "Oh, he's gonna move to second or third." Like I remember when he was at Lake County. I'm sure you do too. People were like, "Oh, he's gonna move to second or third," and they were saying that when he was at Akron in 2021. And it's like, really? I mean, I don't really see. I mean, I see a 45, 50 defender with a 60 arm. And that was me being a high. You remember at one point I was a high man on Bo after his stock plummeted. But I always thought it was just the fact that he was put on an extreme fast track for high school catcher, such a high school catcher drafted by Cleveland, and he didn't really, no one really observed that or kind of took that into account. And if you look at last year, he had like a 33% call stealing rate last year. You look at his highlights and the pitch blocking, and you look at the scouting reports, everything was there. Just saying the pitch blocking was coming around, everything. His game calling is actually really good, by the way, for someone who's kind of struggles with other things. I mean, I would say he shows a real legitimate grasp for game calling that I think is the basis on why he's still a catcher. And why they're trying to work on him with other things, because I think his potential as a defensive catcher is so high despite his struggles with stuff like throwing runners out this year, which he's never had an issue with before.
Right.
At any level. And it's funny because I'm sure you kind of remember him. I'm sure you remember 2019, probably how good he was defensively for someone his age playing in high A. I mean, it was low A then, I think, right?
It was low A then, yeah. But he was 19, and that was still very. I mean, this was a guy who barely even played. Like, he skipped at the time. He still had Mahoning Valley around, and all his experience was at the Arizona rookie. Yeah,
and this is a Canadian catcher, by the way.
Right. Well, I mean, you say Canadian catcher, and the experience level is different up there. But he was always playing against competition older than him up there too, because he was playing on the competition circuit. It wasn't necessarily high school competition. He was playing on the tournament circuit there. So he was
playing with his older brother.
So he was always getting old. And that's why they challenged him for low A in 19, because they felt like he was ready. You got to be mature enough to be able to play full season ball and learn the work that goes into that. Well, that figures. Jose Ramirez just ground the double play to end the game. Lindor threw him out. Wow. Poetic justice. That's painful. So Turning lost all 3 games this series. I don't know. I think Bo Naylor will go back down after this game. I don't know what people thought was going to happen. They were going to call Naylor up and he was going to stay. Like, yeah, could he play right now? I think the question really is, can he finish developing the major league level? Because there is development that happens at the major league level.
And that's my point I wanted to get about. Sandy Alomar is one of the best catching coaches at the major league level, in my personal opinion. I don't know. That may have changed. Times have changed. But I remember Sandy gets a lot of praise, and I don't think Cleveland will have him sticking around as a first base coach and a catching coach if he wasn't that good. And Sandy is also one of the best defensive catchers of his era. And was it injuries, he probably would have been the best catcher of his era because he was just that good. He was a really good player, and he was really underrated because of injuries. So I really would like to see Alomar Jr. get his hands on Bo, because I think that'll be a great experience, especially with Sandy Alomar Jr.'s career path and things like that. How good he was early on as a catcher. You remember he was in the major like 2021, won the Rookie of the Year award, and he was on the way to being a superstar basically, and the injuries happened. So I think that's one key scenario I think that could really help this issue. I think over the years we've seen the organization kind of let when they have catchers at the major league level, I don't know, just because they had Gomes and Beeble for so long and they were so competent and things like that, and Beeble was an organizational guy. I don't know, just my perspective of what and my expectations of what I want from catchers is just kind of skewed very differently just because of how they operated and how good they were at their jobs. And they were also both competent offensively as well in their own ways, especially Bebo when he had that 1 year when he hit 20 home runs. So this is a different scenario, and kind of for me, I guess. So it's weird. I don't know. I think Bo definitely could. I think Bo's given tons of signs over the years that his makeup and his aptitude, that he has the ability to learn on the fly. And I still think he's going to be an average catcher either way. So, I mean.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's gonna be overall an average defensive thing. And eventually framing won't matter because you'll have the automatic ball strike system.
But I think the arm will wind up. Oh, my bad. I didn't mean to cut you off. I think the arm is probably going to wind up being the basis of the value in this profile just because it's so good. It's a legit 60-ish arm, in my opinion.
It is.
And when he has his mechanics in sync for pop-ups, his pop-up times are really good too. And his numbers for throwing guys out, especially last year when guys were taking a lot of attempts on him. I mean, they speak for themselves.
It does. Yeah, no, I'm not worried about the arm at all. I mean, could there be things that he needs to improve mechanically or, just consistency?
He's probably just dealing with the idiosyncrasies at this point. I mean, it's catcher. He's a catcher. I mean, there's going to be tons of things on his plate.
His day is coming. I think it still isn't going to be anytime soon. I don't think it's going to be like, next week. I think we're talking probably sometime in June,
July or August.
I think it depends. If Zunino does show some signs of life offensively or even defensively,
that's true.
It'll turn around. But yeah, if it doesn't, I think it could be June. Otherwise, yeah, I think it's July. It just depends on where the team is at that time. Got to wrap things up here on this episode. Joey Cantillo, promoted to AAA. About time for him, obviously. Really, the only thing that's holding to me Joey Cantillo back is the command. He's got 3 quality pitches. I think he's even got a 4th. I like the slider. I like the curveball. The changeup is his best pitch. But his stuff against or his stuff at first start in AAA, I think Columbus's radar gun is pretty reliable. And now that he's got some StatCast data on him too, because we get StatCast at AAA now, this says he hit 98. I don't know if he hit 98, but I feel like StatCast for the most part is, it makes some errors, but they're mostly good. So I think he might have got to 97, but he was consistently around 94, which is good for him. A lot of extension on the fastball. Huge vertical break on the curve. I mean, I think I saw one curve that got 66 inches of vertical break. Tristan McKenzie gets like 52. So it just tells you how big it is.
That's Barry Zito-ish.
Yes, that's a great comparison. Now, I don't know if his curveball has the bite to it that Zito's had as far as consistent shape or consistent the velocity needs to improve, but the shape is there. It looks like a pretty curveball. I have worries that it's going to be a little loopy at times, but the stuff is definitely there, and I like the curveball quite a bit. So that's a lot of fun. So keep an eye on Cantillo.
So I haven't seen a lot of Cantillo, but statistically, he's just been so dominant. You look at how young he's been too. It's just been his health and the command, and his command's been really good at times too. Like when I have watched him, he's shown very interesting feel for moving stuff around the edges of the zone and just being aggressive and stuff like that. So you don't really see many left-handers who have just as many good pitches as he does, with the velocity as well, and the statistical pedigree, and the youth, unless they're like a college guy or something maybe. And to get him as like the 3rd or 4th piece in a trade was just.
I would say he could have been the 4th, but the 3rd. I mean, talking about Naylor being good at the major league level, and then you have Arias, who's been a great defender, and he's starting to show some signs of life with the bat. And then you have Cantillo. I think it's going to be a good profile. I really like him a lot. Now you brought it up too. I forget Cantillo was a high school player that Padres drafted. He was everybody was all over Cantillo in the draft because he was young for the class and super tall, super projectable, a lot of good traits. And I didn't even think so. He was taken late in the draft. Everyone I don't think thought about him, but everybody was in on him, prospect wise because of the upside. I never really thought about it, but he was a high school player. So hopefully he is the next high school pitcher Cleveland has success with, because like we talked about, it's been pretty ugly. Real quickly, George Valera, for those who haven't seen, unfortunately back on the IL with the hamstring injury. Player you and I have both seen a lot of. We both like the upside, at least, as an average outfielder who can hit for power.
It's probably a platoon bat at this point, unless you want to tolerate his on-base skills versus lefties.
And you can do that, especially if he has 25 home run power, which I think he does. But man, I just, okay, so let's go back over his injury history real quick. 2018 or 2017.
Hamate bone, like 6 games in.
Yeah, he had a hamate injury. He had a core muscle injury. And 2019, when he was at Lake County, or was it 2021, he had, the same things. He had another core muscle injury.
He had a knee injury too, I think, when he was in Lake County my first year.
I think he had a hamstring injury even then too. So this is not the first time his hamstring has popped up for him. But then, the hamate twice. It's just these little things that have popped up for him, and I just kind of wonder, is it
And
always
he had a
going to be?
hamstring injury in Mahoning Valley too, I think.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. Like, is it ever going to be, you know, I don't want to say, like, we'll see how serious this is.
Honestly, I did not know what the injury was until you just said what you just said like 30 seconds ago. I thought it was another wrist injury.
No, it's the hamstring this time. So I guess it's good that it's not the hamate, because that's one that can linger. But, you know, hamstrings being
I thought he irritated something with his wrists again.
No.
But it's really good to see him showing raw power this early. So that's one thing I was really worried about.
I wasn't concerned about his bat coming back. The patience at AAA has been good. I think I said last week on here, I'm not sure if it was here at Lockdown Guardians, I said, very rare to see a guy miss as much time as he has this year. Like, being a top prospect and being a AAA, like, you can taste that major league shot, right? You can feel like it's right in front of you. It's right there. And he missed so much time this year. It's on the 40. He missed the first month of the year.
And he just comes back and looks like he's been playing.
Right. He didn't look over anxious. Like, a lot of guys would come back and start swinging everything, trying to make up for all that time missed. He hasn't done that. So I was impressed by that. But I don't know. I just started to worry. Like, is he always going to have these little dings and dents throughout his career? Like, is this going to be a guy who just constantly, like, make play 40, 50 games, get hurt, come back, you know, a couple weeks later, and then go back on the IL? Like, is that who he's going to be? I don't know. Some guys are just like that. Not as bad as Byron Buxton, where Byron Buxton, you know, is one of the most dynamic players in baseball and is super fun to watch. But
I mean,
he's only played 100
weird.
games once.
It's kind of uncanny with Byron Buxton. He's probably only played more than like 60 or 70 games once. I mean, it's just kind of crazy. I don't like talk. It's kind of hard talking about injuries. You just want to be respectful of people's bodies and stuff like that. They can't control it. And with these guys who give their lives to the game, we know they want to be out there and they want to have it in their way. I don't know. Your case is totally valid with Valera. Just not just the frequency of injuries, but it's mostly been just wrist or lower leg.
Yeah, in the core in 2021. Yeah, I don't know. I just hope it's not a case of, like, all these things tend to pop up, because some guys are like that, and maybe it will be for him. Like, you know, last year he stopped running. Like, he stole plenty of bases in Lake County when we saw him in 2020, and last year he didn't. And I thought, well, maybe that's because, you know, he doesn't want to get hurt. That's certainly a valid concern. And he's already stole a base this year, but it's like, okay, the injuries pile up. He's going to stop doing that, because that's a skill he needs to have.
That's probably why Cleveland moved him off center field, because remember they had him playing center field for a while. Although he never really had that burst either. He just was a route runner.
He did play some center coming back, and everyone's like, "Oh, he's playing center. That's great." And I'm like, just to get his bat in the line, they have to move guys around. It's not really this.
They probably moved him to right field, and you probably said that the game after 7 innings anyway. So.
Yeah, and he could be a good right fielder too. The arm is definitely there. We've seen the arm, so I don't know. I just hope he's off the IL soon.
He's not a bad or lethargic defender by any means. His motor is there too.
Yeah, he could be a good defender. I'm not concerned about the defense in the corners. I don't know how it'll be in center. I don't think he'll be there long term. The arm is fine. Yeah, I hope he gets back on the field. I hope it's not a long term thing. And
do we know if they just said hamstring? They didn't really say if it was a strain or.
No, just that hamstring. I think so. I mean, I'd imagine just a strain, but we'll see. Could be well. Gavin Williams, I'm just going to quickly run through this. Probably his best start of the season. 6 innings, 9 strikeouts, no walks for the first time in his season this year. He had 5 instances last year. But, man, the guy's getting better. My only take on Gavin Williams is this. This is not a negative, because some guys can do this. He is super fastball dominant, and he kind of reminds me of Spencer Strider in the way that, and I guess Garrett Cole, but Garrett Cole has.
I was gonna say Garrett Cole.
Yeah, maybe that's where Williams can get to. You know, you hope, because obviously the physical profile and the fastball are there.
The curveball and the slider have a lot of work, and so does his command, because his command is nowhere near as good as Cole's.
Yeah, obviously, yeah. Cole has developed his breaking pitches. It's taken a long time for him to get to where he was from Pittsburgh days, but
I mean, Pittsburgh had him throwing
since
1977. So
right, and they're getting better now. But Spencer Strider is a guy in Atlanta who relies on his fastball and slider pretty much exclusively. He has a changeup right now. It's getting better. And that's who Williams is. He doesn't really have much of a changeup. The fastball is so good that it works, and the slider and the curveball are good, but it doesn't go to him very often. So, like, part of me wonders this. Like, okay, let's say he has a game where he doesn't have his fastball command, because that happens. Like, look at Tanner Bybee, guy, great command guy. He's had 2 starts in the majors where he didn't have command of the fastball. It's going to happen to everybody. So what happens to Gavin Williams in the majors? Because, in AAA, guys are going to chase crappy pitches. It's AAA. But in majors, you're not going to get, certain hitters to chase, everything else if your fastball's not working. They're going to make you throw
once a week is going to be that much better than a AAA player. I'm just really wrapping my head around how good the average major leaguer is, and how collectively that, and how good that makes Atlanta collectively, and how often pitchers have to watch themselves. I mean, I've seen like Michael Martinez turn 99 mile per hour fastballs that AAA hitters will whiff through. I mean, it's kind of just ridiculous, just the difference in the standards.
That is, people should realize how good the average major leaguer is. I mean, for all of our gripes about Ahmed Rosario, he's a good average major league player, and that's a certain level to attain to. You just you want more. But yeah, so my thing on Williams is just I want to see what happens when he doesn't have fastball command. Will major league hitters chase the slider and curveball? Does he have enough on those 2 pitches consistently for strikes to offset a day where he doesn't have his fastball? But his fastball is so good, he could be a fastball dominant pitcher. But those are things he's got to kind of work on. But again, a 0 walk day today was fantastic. I think he's getting better. He's still throwing 97, 99, hitting 100. His day is coming soon. I don't think it'll be this year. Depends on what happens, but we'll see. I'm still a big fan. Gabriel Rodriguez. Oh, go ahead.
I want to say about Gavin Williams. It's also his fastball usage is also gonna be interesting, because how is he gonna go through a lineup second time, third time? How is he gonna get deep into games at the major league level when you're that fastball dominant? And he can command his stuff, but one thing I've noticed is his slider and curveball, they really just fly toward the edge of the zone, and he just kind of hopes and prays that they're competitive enough to get a swing and miss.
I think the slider is a good enough pitch on its own, and the curveball has gotten better too.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the fastball is good enough where this doesn't really matter, but I do think that usage is a good point, because, like I said, either he'll have a game where it's not his best pitch, or
he really needs to work on his changeup too, because that's going to be big for him second and third time through the order, just because hitters are going to hunt that fast. Hitters at the major level are going to do better with that fastball no matter what. It's just
even Garrett Cole gets a home runs on his fastball, so
they're gonna get theirs off of it, which is what I'm trying to say.
So that is going to be interesting. That's why I kind of have him as like a number 2 kind of starter versus an ace, just because I'm waiting to see this at the development secondary.
I think he's a really good 3. I don't know. I haven't seen enough of him to make him a number 2. So, plus I think there's just something about him compared. I think there's something about Bybee just with his command, I think, and his feel.
Well, he's got 4 pitches. Yeah, you got a guy with 4 versus a guy maybe 2.
I mean, the command and feel is just so much better, though. I mean, but Bybee is a 65, 70-ish command guy. So,
yeah. Gabriel Rodriguez, real quickly, let's run through some other things. 2 home runs over the weekend. I really liked Gabriel Rodriguez a year ago. I think he waits too long to take his swings. I think he lets the ball get deep on him before he hits sometimes. The 2 home runs he had over the weekend, though, he got out in front of and he pulled the crap out of them. It was great to see. Yeah, I have a lot of hope for Gabriel Rodriguez still. I think he's still young for that level, still walking at a good amount. The strikeouts are a bit of an issue, but he had this issue in Lynchburg. I think he'll catch up, but the power is there. He's just got to get to in games, and I think he is a fantastic fielder at third base. So I'm still in on Gabriel Rodriguez. I just think that it's going to be a longer developmental path.
How much hype it was around him the following year after Valera, just because of, I think it was the Valera effect, just how much hype he got.
Highest signing bonus for position player in club history.
And it was weird watching him at Lake County last year, because he kind of looked very pedestrian at times, but there were times where he looked really good. And it was just, I don't know. It was just kind of hard to judge him last year. I don't know. I do know his swing looks like Manny Machado's.
Yeah, I just think he's inside outs balls too often. Like he just stuff he should be pulling for power like he did over the weekend.
He tries to hit over the second baseman.
Yeah, like I
What are
think
you
he just
selling out
needs.
for?
Yeah, he's just got to catch the ball in front a little more, and he'll get some more of that power. The swing is definitely there. I agree, and the glove is and the arm are both good. I think it'll get there. I think it's just going to be a long developmental path for him, but I'm still buying some shares there. These are more just kind of news and notes here at the end. Nikhazy and Leftwich, they were pitching in a tandem all year. They are now split up because of the promotion from Cantillo from Akron.
Crazy
So
Nikhazy.
I still love, I love Doug Nikhazy. He's my guy. 4 walks and 5 innings over the weekend or this past week, but he had 9 strikeouts. That was a career high, and not a career high, a season high, and the 5 innings were a season high. So that was good. But they're going to be split up now from their tandem. So Jack Leftwich did not fare as well. He gave up 8 runs in, I think 3 innings of work. So that was kind of brutal. So we'll see what happens with them, but I still remain pretty high on both of them. But that seems to be how Akron is going to cover innings with Cantillo gone, so I wouldn't expect a promotion from Lake County anytime soon. Speaking of pitchers, Parker Messick was pitcher of the week last week in Carolina.
He needs to be in Lake County already.
He definitely does. I think the real issue there is that they have nobody to backfill innings with. And I'm going to get to this in a second too. I think maybe they are starting to get there. So I think the Parker Messick promotion, I think, could be coming soon because they're starting to move other guys out of the rotation. He was hitting 93 today, I heard, in Carolina. Didn't have his best stuff today, but he had a good start back on Tuesday. We had 7 more strikeouts. So if he's consistently hitting 91, 93, that's fine. I would like to see him in another gear. I think he still has more in there, but it's definitely way too good for high A. But Austin Peterson, if you're looking for the next Reid Johnston type kind of guy, Austin Peterson to me is kind of similar. Fastball slider, workhorse style build. He's having a pretty good year in Lynchburg. I think he'll be exciting, or at least a solid pitching prospect. Nate Furman, who we've talked a lot about in this podcast, he's been on this podcast, has had a good year, but the last couple of weeks have been kind of a struggle for him. He only had 4 hits this past week, which is pretty low for him. He only had 2 walks, which is low for him. Up to 25 steals, but he is starting to, I don't know if he's getting unlucky or he's just kind of hitting a lull, but things have been kind of tough for Nate Furman the last 2 weeks or so. We'll see if he can turn it around in the end of the year. And then Adam Tulloch looks like he is going to be in the Lynchburg rotation now. He went 4 innings, didn't have a tandem starter. Him or Zach Jacobs, I should say, were kind of pulling tandem starts. So if they are stretching Adam Tulloch out to be a starter after he was kind of reliever early in the year, that kind of makes me wonder if they will have a guy ready to pitch every. They're still on a Parker Messick. Okay, so that Lynchburg very rarely at that level has a 5-man rotation. Parker Messick is staying every 5th day, even though he has an off day on Monday. But he is one of the only guys to make 2 starts a week down there with Austin Peterson. So interesting that those 2 guys are getting the 5-man rotation treatment. Everybody else is kind of on a tandem or a 6-man rotation. That just tells you those guys are college guys, and they should both be in Lake County. All right, let's get some questions in here real quick before we get out of here, Pat. Let's try to make these quick takes, but real quick, future at shortstop, assuming Jimenez stays at second when Ahmed leaves. That's from our buddy Quincy Wheeler.
Oh, what's up, Quincy?
I'm saying Arias. I mean, well, okay. I'm going to say Rocchio because as much as I think Arias is the better defender than Rocchio at shortstop,
I don't think Arias is going to hit enough here to stick here. I think he's going to stick somewhere else.
I'm not worried about. Well, I don't know. I think with consistent playing time, the bat's starting to look better. But my thing is,
am I going to keep Arias in the right field or something like that?
Yeah, like, does it make sense to take advantage of his arm and athleticism, play him at third, play him at short, play him in right, play him at first, and then have Rocchio at short? Because Rocchio is not a guy who's going to play a ton of positions. He could play second and short. He could play third. That's fine. But I think I don't know if I could consider Rocchio a guy who can play first or outfield. And I think Arias' arm is wasted at first base, but at least he can play there. I don't know. I kind of like the idea of keeping Arias in a super utility role if you utilize him the right way, and then Rocchio plays short.
I agree. I think Jose Ramirez is getting a little older than he is. He's going to need a few more days off. I think what I think Arias is going to be a great defensive replacement for the infield. So maybe keeping him in right field so he can maybe make a transition. We're trying to shuffle Ahmed Rosario out because Ahmed Rosario has been the worst defender at shortstop in the majors this year, pretty much. I mean, on paper and in depth. So I don't know. I think Arias as a Super Tuesday player makes a lot of sense because you can take advantage of his athleticism and his arm, and you can keep his bat lined up. And with Cleveland, kind of. Plus, you can also platoon him too if you want to with platoon certain positions too with how many lefties Cleveland has in the corner outfield spots or in the corner infield spots. I mean, so you can do that with him too. I think he does offer. He just offers a lot of utility in a variety of ways right now. So, but I think I'll go Arias just because of how much they've spoken about him too. I think I'll go Arias with you as well.
Yeah, he's a better defender, but I'm going Rocchio though because I think I'd like to keep Arias in that utility role because it does work for him. Mike Mahoney from Lake County, he wants to think of any players who have played above their stat lines this year, and who would you call up to Akron first from the pitching staff? If I'm sending one guy up from Lake County from the pitching staff,
probably Reid Johnston.
I would say Will Dion. I would say he's got enough command where maybe it's time to see what he can do at Double-A. I like to see, I mean, Reid Johnston too because of the age, and the stuff might be fine, but I think
the command isn't there though. Yeah, so
it's not. No, I think Dion. I think you got to see what his command can do against Double-A. I don't know about players that have played above their stat line this year. I'm not really sure. I'm just kind of looking at the numbers in the minors. Like Diane Frias, we talked about, I think has played above his stat line a little bit.
Definitely.
Yordi's Velez is having a good year, so I guess we normally have to say he's not playing above his stat line. Let me see, go down this list here. Mike Colado's having a good year, but I don't really know. Connor Cox is an interesting guy to me. Doesn't swing and miss a lot. Very patient hitter, good defender, no power to speak of so far. That's a guy I'm really interested in to see what they can do with him. So he's an interesting one.
Man, Joe Lampe is plummeted. Sheesh.
Yeah. I think he'll be okay, but I, for whatever reason, he got off to a really hot start, but I think it was a lot of
early.
Yeah, I mean, these guys are for the first time are getting their bodies to play 6 days a week for 6 months, whereas in college you're playing 3 or 4 days a week at most. You get a couple of days off in between, so that's a big adjustment for a lot of these guys at that level. But I was worried about the lack of punch with his bat sometimes. Buddy Lamole, he wanted to talk about Juan Brito. We kind of mentioned that already. He also wanted to ask, what does Aaron Bracho have to do to be taken seriously? It's almost June.
Do it until August.
Yeah, I got to see it over. It's been 2 bad years. I got to see it.
Honestly, you got to do it this year and next year for me, respectfully.
Yeah. And
he has a nice Corvette, though.
I was worried for a while he was just going to be a car guy. The power's good. There's no doubt about the power. He's only hitting left-handed now. In the past, he was a switch hitter. Not going to be a good defender really in any position. Like he's, Juan Brito-esque in that role. He's not going to be a great defender anywhere.
He has a very similar profile to Juan Brito. Pull heavy, fly ball heavy.
Yes. I'm going to need.
He has a lot more raw power than Brito does because I was very high on Bracho when he was tearing the ACL in Mahoney Valley up.
I'm going to need like a 20 home run year from Bracho, and I'm going to need to see him end the year with like a 350 OBP. So I don't think there's going to be a point this season where I'm buying in terms of like, okay, this is, I need
the
to see. The
double's got to be there too.
Yeah, it's a home run or a single right now with him, or it's a walk. It's in the strikeout. It's very bizarre. Real name, no gimmicks, Carson A. Merck. A prospect not getting the attention they deserve. And who is the fastest player in the system? Who was a prospect? I mean, we talk about Reid Johnston a little bit. He's interesting. I got to say, it's just really a down year prospect-wise. Like, it's very unfortunate because, a lot of guys have been hurt and have underperformed this year. I mean, I mentioned Austin Peterson, who's a guy maybe worth paying attention to. Yeah, especially in the lower minors. I'm going to say, reliever-wise, Sean Rapp. Tyler Thornton probably for me in terms of reliever. Like I said, 30 strikeouts, 13 innings. That's a guy who's really interesting for an undersized guy who doesn't throw super hard, but is very unique. Fastest player in the system right now, gosh, it might be
Durango, maybe.
Yeah, Durango is. He's just not an affiliate, unfortunately.
Seriously?
He's been. Well, he was back in Arizona last year to try to gain some strength because he was getting overmatched at low A. Isaiah Green's super fast. I don't know if he's the fastest. I would say Guy Lipscomb or Nate Furman. They're both 70 runners. Durango might be an 80 runner, but yeah, I haven't seen him in a while, so we'll see what happens with him. And then David Osborne said Cade Smith or Tyler Thornton. Who you got? I'm gonna go Tyler Thornton. I think he's got more control. Cade Smith is leading the Eastern League in saves, but I think Tyler Thornton's got better control and is more deceptive. And then here's the last one I say for this for the end. I don't want to go too deep on this because this is the longest episode of the season. No shock with you being on it. No, it's with you being on it. No shock. This is good because I've spent a lot of episodes talking to myself and people are tired of hearing my voice. Azuma Films. At what point do we start looking at the Guardians strength and conditioning program in the offseason, dealing with guys who have not gotten bigger like Juan, Brennan, Jimenez? Lindor was a beanpole when he first came up. Freeman, Rocchio, they took it upon themselves to train. Okay. Here's my thing with this. Strength and conditioning to me is more about injury prevention than it is strength gains. You're like, conditioning, you're talking about guys getting into better shape. Yes, you want them to improve and be more muscular, but more muscular doesn't always mean, it means different things in different positions. Like, baseball's such a rotational sport. So like, I know Yandy Diaz is probably having a great year power wise for the first time ever, but look how long he had those big ass biceps, right? Like that doesn't translate into power. Jose Ramirez, not really a guy you look at and you're like, wow, this looks like a guy who's going to hit 40 home runs. It doesn't really matter. It's a rotational sport.
And when you think of short, thick, stubby arms as what you would think attached to a slugger. I mean, you mostly think of guys with long, muscular arms who extend their arms and get to the ball. Like, I mean, you get the big guys like Mark McGwire, Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, guys like that. I mean, I think the height. I think one thing about baseball height is the leverage that tall people can use to turn on the ball. I mean, just naturally. I mean, just by having longer limbs and be able to generate more energy with longer limbs. And it's cool about it.
But it's just all about torque and rotation. So, like, you want to add weight to your core muscles. Brennan has gotten bigger, I would say. But Brennan's whole issue was a mechanical thing because he was trying to get more into his hips with the swing. Juan's never. I mean, I shouldn't say never because he's not much. He's thin, but he's not as all that big. It's more about injury prevention, though, and you want guys to have strength gains too. But I don't think strength and conditioning is really talking about like with power. Like, there's a lot more that goes into it than just getting stronger. It's just such a rotational thing.
I think your observation about prioritization with endurance for strength and conditioning with baseball is a big thing. I mean, even with basketball, the big thing is low weight, high reps. Because I mean, you got to think about how many jump shots those guys are shooting. Like, I remember one video that went viral of Channing Frye using low, like 5-pound dumbbells, and was just like going super fast, doing up and down. People are like, why are you doing it like that? Like, I'm a shooter. I have to do for my endurance for my shoulders and arms throughout the season.
Right.
I mean, that's just preventing injuries. I mean, he has to use his shoulder. I mean, think about how much a spot-up shooter is that all year long. I mean, think about practice. They're taking 1,000 jump shots every day. You got to keep your body like together. I mean, and I think you think about that for baseball, just the muscle groups you're using and stuff like that. For like you said, it's just so rotational. I mean, I don't think guys will want to get huge just because of how much it's going to restrict their mobility. I don't think they're guys that can get that big unless they get worse at the game. I mean, I'm pretty sure if and plus everybody's body is different too. I mean, like KD, for example. KD has been doing a lot of weightlifting and stuff, and his body's never changed throughout his career. While someone like Lindor or Giannis, who have done a lot of work with their body, and they look huge, and you can see it. I mean, KD still looks like a mean pole, and he can still bench press 225 10 times.
If you're doing the right things that are important to what part of body you use for the sport, and for baseball, that's rotational torque. But even then, like I said, Jose Ramirez,
I'm sure Roddy Tellez and Alex Manoah do their fair share of conditioning and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always going to be, it's baseball. There's always going to be funny built guys around.
Yeah, I get the question too about just like how do we get them to develop power, but it's not really about developing and not adding strength. Like, okay, so some guys are using the weighted bat and that's what Stephen Kwan has done is the weighted bat. A lot of guys are turning to that to try to increase exit velocity. It's not really about strength. It is to a point, but Lindor definitely filled out physically. But remember, he was also he was 17.
He was a big projectable too.
Yeah, he was also 17 when he came to the organization. Same with Rokiel, they're 16. So yes, they've gotten bigger, but they're already kind of maxed out. You're not looking for a lot more power from those guys anyway. It's weighted bat training. It is core muscle strength, but it's also, Jose Ramirez became a good power hitter because he learned to turn on balls on the inside part of the plate and get the ball in the air. And he's just a good rotational athlete. It's not necessarily, and I know not everyone
knows how to loft the ball in the air. I mean, there's so many. Yeah. There's a lot of ways for guys to get
power. Power to me isn't so much strength as it is the ability to hit. That's hitting for power. It comes in all different shapes and sizes.
It's a skill. Like everybody isn't gonna backspin a baseball like a four-seamer off the bat like Albert Pujols is to all fields. Some guys like Ramirez, they just loft the ball in the air to a certain point, and at that certain point, the ball is going to come down over the fence.
And you made a good point too about like not everybody you don't want everybody to get bigger and bulky too, because Stephen Kwan getting bigger and bulky isn't going to help him because it's going to restrict his mobility in left field. It's going to reduce his speed. And he's also doesn't have a big frame. He's not going to be able to.
Think about somebody like Tony Gwynn bulking up and losing all that bend and flexibility and everything that he did around the plate to where he can just hit everything in all the quadrants and reach out and do different things. I mean,
there's just so many different types of hitters. And you mentioned Judge and Stanton and Lindor and Ramirez have had power throughout their career. There's just so many different types of hitters. And it's a skill.
There's so many different ways to skin the cat.
Yeah, it's not necessarily a strength training thing as it is a skill. And I think strength and conditioning in baseball mostly, and maybe even all sports. Football is obviously different, but it's about endurance and being able to play the whole season and not wear down. That's why, and I don't want to go too deep into this, but I guarantee you'll agree with me on this philosophically. Like people get mad about Barry Bonds using steroids. Steroids didn't make Barry Bonds a better hitter. That guy could hit anything any time of day. What it did for him was give him the ability to endurance.
And I think every major leaguer who's used steroids or has watched someone use steroids has said that. Like since time immemorial, even when like guys were using the greenies and stuff, it just made them better.
You bounce back
after, it made them better the day after they got 3 hits. Like, and how many times have we seen guys who torch like 3-4 hits go 0-4 for the next X amount of games for whatever reason?
Yeah, physically you're just better after that, and you're able to repeat that swing, and you're able to get the you can go lift more because you have more energy. You can go lift versus guys who maybe don't lift as much during the season now because of trying to stay more preserve their energy, I should say. But Barry Bonds,
it's not going to make you more skilled for sure. It's just going to make your ceiling higher, and I don't think people realize too with baseball, these guys got to roll out of bed and go up to the plate and hit 5 times every day for like 5 days a week.
Right, they're at the ballpark at 1 p.m. for a 7 p.m. game, sometimes even earlier, especially in the minor leagues.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you for joining me, Pat. I really appreciate it.
No problem. I really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you for having me.
Yes, and assume you'll want to come back again. Hopefully everybody enjoyed the episode. Before we get out of here, though, tell everybody once again, Pat, where any content you're putting out these days, let them know where to find it.
So my name is Pat Ellington Jr. Right now, I just run an independent Substack blog, and I'm doing some work over at Baseball Prospectus and the SI affiliate for the San Francisco Giants. That's kind of where I'm at right now. You can find me on Twitter at @tangent_uno. IG, same thing. So yeah.
All right, go follow Pat, follow his work. I subscribe to Baseball Prospectus for a lot of reasons. Pat, one of them. Good site for a lot of different things, and
indeed, very good people.
Yeah, very good people over there. The RGB Baseball Substack is also very good as well. A lot of good historical stuff and current stuff.
You really been a very boon with your help. So I appreciate you.
I enjoy the work. Go check it out. Follow Pat, and we'll catch you again next week.
Definitely. Thank you for having me again. I appreciate it.